You know, D3 is a hell of a place. Let me just be honest with you about something right now, JB. We are unlike D1 and D2 in so many different ways, and I think we have the best example of it from something that happened just a couple days before release of this show, or a few days actually. So remember we had the auction going for that 50 jacket, and show it on the screen right now, and
Stagg
everything
Bowl,
else.
Sparkle Man special,
Well,
the 50.
We got the opening bid was $500. We got a bid for $500 and then $510, and that was it. Bidding ended there. Great, $510. So who wins it? So the person's name ends up being, I believe, Jay Perkins from it looked like Wisconsin. And I'm like, oh, must be.
Yeah, isn't he the guy who does warhawkfootball.com?
Well, that was the thing. It never clicked. I'm like, it must be like a Cortland grad that, was out there in Wisconsin. And you're right. I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. I know this name. And I get a message, and we'll show it here. Hi, Frank. I hope you're doing well. I won the Stagg Bowl 50 jacket. I'm grateful to support you and the St. Jude cause. They do great work. Indeed, they do. I'd like to donate the jacket back to you. If one of the guys at Cortland would like the jacket, feel free to surprise him with the gift at your discretion. They certainly earned it. Wow.
So is this the same Perkins family that their stadium is named after, maybe, or is that just a coincidence?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know, but let me just say, again, $510 plus sales tax, because unfortunately eBay decides that even though it was a complete not-for-profit scenario, because they were supposedly getting a piece of goods, that sales tax applied there. So he ended up spending in the $540 plus range, I think it was, on this, and gave it back to us. $510 went directly to St. Jude's via eBay. And wow. Again, it's a situation where a guy from Wisconsin loves D3 so much. He said to me further, maybe it's a good statement of the brotherhood of D3. We compete hard, but in the end, we are all in it together. Just a thought. Amen to that.
Wow. Well, if I were you, Frank, I would just give it to like the Cortland Hall of Fame. I mean, that jacket should probably be enshrined with the championship trophy and all the other memorabilia from the 23 season. That would be my guess. But what a generous thing for Jay Perkins to do. And thanks, man. We appreciate it. And yeah, I couldn't agree more with his sentiment. This D3 thing, it's kind of its own brother and sisterhood.
Folks, there isn't a better way, I should say, to start preseason show number 3 of season 17 of In the Huddle. So, season 17, preseason show 3, focuses on regions 3 and 4. And if you're good at math, you kind of probably knew that was coming after 1 and 2 was our show that got released on Thursday. But we got some great interviews coming up here. First things first, we're going to go through and look at some of the key week 1 games, and then some of the key games, period, and then talk with our interviews, or show our interviews, however you want to call it. There were some great ones for sure. As I stumble getting words out of my mouth right now, I'm going to hand it over to you to maybe give us some thoughts here, or previews of what you like or what you're excited about in regions 3 and 4 this season, JB.
Well, what I like to see, especially in week 1 early on, is that there's some really interesting cross-regional games between region 3 and 4 teams and others sort of outside of that. So I'm excited to see how some of these games play out. But, there are a lot of the usual suspects that we're going to probably expect to potentially repeat and go back to the playoffs. I mean, the ASC leaning towards Hardin-Simmons, but can UMHB bounce back? In the ODAC, is Randolph-Macon the same team after losing a lot of those key players? Can they win the ODAC again? We got the SAA where Barry was picked to be the preseason #1 over defending champs Trinity. How will that shake out? We have the SCAC now in the mix, which I don't even know, honestly, all those teams that are in that conference just yet. I need to study up on that. I know that there's a lot of former ASC teams that picked up the ball and didn't want to play with UMHB and others. And then we obviously have the USA South with Huntington and company, and then the HCAC. We got Alma and the MIAA. We got the NCAC and the OAC. Mount Union once again picked to win that. It's not whack in the OAC, as I guess. Well, maybe it is. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, let's jump in here. So when we're looking at basically Regions 3 and 4, we're looking at the home team in these situations where there's crossover. So if you don't see your team or the game listed in the region you thought it might be, you might want to look at who's hosting, essentially. JB works hours upon hours on these lists, folks. Hours and hours every week, just putting numbers and words on paper
like crazy. So what else is new? It's my lack of attention to detail that I've got. Yeah,
sad but true. But hey, listen, let's roll here on Region 3, and specifically, we got a little disagreement about the game of the week. First things first. Here's what I'll say: Del Valle Hampton Sydney is a tempting game to pick as a game of the week because that is a matchup you won't normally see. That's for sure. And so I'd be curious to see on the road for Del Valle how they're going to do under Coach Isgro, in the first game in that type of venue, that setting. So I'm actually excited to see that one. Bridgewater Susquehanna, that's no pushover start game for Susquehanna either, but we pick, you have Barry versus Huntington, big game. We'll talk more about that in a second. And I have the start of this new double round robin scenario for the ASC, Hardin-Simmons and Howard Payne, basically, right?
I guess so. And I should quickly mention that I think when I put this list together, I still thought Susquehanna was a Region 3 team. They apparently are not. We talked about that in our Region 1 and 2 show. But before we had that update, we thought that Susquehanna was a Region 3 team. Bridgewater certainly is out of the ODAC, and it is a really interesting matchup. And if we didn't have it on the Region 2 slide, it should have been, because this is a really interesting battle between two good teams. And, I think that it bears mentioning. I also like the fact on Thursday night, Frank, we get the Blazer Major Bowl with Belhaven and Millsaps kicking things off like they always do. Those broadcasts, if you've never seen some of the USA South broadcasts, they're phenomenal. So if you're jonesing for football on Thursday night next week after the big RPI lacrosse game, or maybe you're taking a break from Brockport Buff State, tune into the Blazer Major Bowl. I think you'll have fun. And then we also have Centenary, Frank, out of Louisiana, one of the newer programs. They're hosting Hendricks.
Yep.
Centenary. I'm saying that one wrong. Okay. And then so that's a new program. There's a handful of those this year, and so we'll be interested to see how Centenary from Louisiana does this season.
We're going to be drinking a lot of this stuff.
Huh? It's one of those
shows. The Monster juice to get all this football action in from Thursday on in that week, or that long weekend of football. Yeah. Hey, thank God Monday's a holiday. I'll rest up a little bit for all this stuff, but wow. That's Region 3. And then let's just talk about the Region 4 games of Week 1 that we're watching here a little bit. Some interesting ones. St. Norbert, Wabash, it might be a close game, actually. Mm-hmm. I have a feeling it's not going to be a blowout by any stretch of the imagination. Nope. Christopher Newport versus Trine. CNU, can they defend in that NJAC situation, or can they win their conference this year? That it's no longer an NJAC situation.
It's a long haul for them.
Yep. So versus Trine, and Trine at home, always a little tough out there. We have our picks here. You have River Falls versus Alma. I think that's a good pick. I'm also, just to be a little bit of a contrarian, since you went first on all these, I'm going Rose-Hulman versus DePauw, because that's a good, I think, starting situation. More on that situation in a little bit. It's kind of funny that the 3 out of the 4 games we've picked as games of the week involve players we interviewed for this show coming up. Do you notice that? How that works there? Okay. Yeah, exactly. So as we kind of sort things out here and we begin to look forward beyond week 1, Trinity versus Belhaven, that's going to be an interesting game to see what the SAA may start looking like to a certain degree with respect to Trinity. Yeah. Will they be back here to the same level without Tucker Horn and a lot of others over there? DePauw Barry. I mean, that's a great week 2 matchup right there. Hobart Macon, then Barry Macon. I mean, we got some really good stuff in the out of conference right out of the gate there.
Yeah.
Mount Union Baldwin Wallace in week 4. So you go into the conference play in the OAC, as you call it. Endicott Hardin-Simmons in Texas this time. Will there be a repeat in week 5 of what happened last year in Massachusetts? Trying and hope, always a good game to watch. Hardin-Simmons, Mary Hardin-Baylor, part 1 in week 6, because that'll happen twice this season. More on that in a bit.
Yep.
And gosh, we have so many different things going on here. Trying Alma, which is for probably a MIAA bragging rights at the very least by that point in the season. And Baldwin Wallace, John Carroll. You can see the rest of them here, folks, as you look down them. But the fact that John Carroll and Mount Union is in week 3, I skipped over that purposely. I want to kind of go back there for a second with you, JB. That is just reverse what we used to expect. It used to be a later in the season type game.
Yeah.
This is early for that game, and it's going to settle out again, much like last year. After Wisconsin Whitewater and Mount Union on John Carroll's schedule, it's going to sort of give this weird starting gate situation for John Carroll in their last year again for OAC play, as they're going to be joining the NCAC starting in the following year.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on how that develops for a team like John Carroll again this year?
Well, once again, I think John Carroll has really front-loaded their schedule, and it's going to be incumbent on them if they do drop 1 or 2 early on in September that they're going to have to basically win out and either be a 9-1 or an 8-2 at-large team. But we know that by the new NPI number hocus pocus that 8-2 is not necessarily a guarantee to get you into the extra 8 playoff spots. Theoretically, it should. I know the OAC is usually thought of very favorably on a national perspective, but time will tell.
Whitewater is their only non-conference game, right? Because that's 9 conference games plus 1. And so that's going to be the only thing that saves them at 8-2. Because Mount Union, unfortunately for them, is part of the mix of the conference that will average out to 500 or near 500 because they don't play enough out-of-conference games. And this is one of those cases where we talked about it in preseason show number 1. The numbers are not going to support these longer conferences that are short on out-of-conference games ultimately. So they may be strong, but they're not. Their numbers aren't going to reflect just how strong they might be because of this phenomenon that exists in the numbers. So an 8-2 John Carroll could struggle if Whitewater especially has an off season for some reason this year. So it looks like a good schedule subjectively, but we're not allowed to do it subjectively. We're just trying to get you kind of comfortable with where the shortcomings are in these situations, and that's why I wanted to focus on that John Carroll situation. So we got a lot of interviews to go here, so let's get this rolling here. First off, Barry had a good season last year. You were front and center for a game that went back and forth. The first 3 quarters looked like it was going to be Barry, and then it wasn't. And we'll talk about that with Brandon Cade. But go ahead and introduce him as we go to his interview.
Yeah, so this next interview is going to feature a senior running back out of Berry College in Georgia. named Brendan Cade, a guy that I got to see firsthand, one of the best running backs in the country, and he's going to tell us a little bit about what they saw happen in 23 and what their expectations are for this year. So, Brandon, great to have you on the show today. What was the reaction for the Vikings this week when it came out that you guys were picked the preseason favorites in the SAA?
I think we appreciated the honor, but at the end of the day, football is played on the field. So it was good to get a little bit of recognition, but at the end of the day, we gotta go out there and win, and we haven't done that in the past 3 years. So this is a motivated group for sure. So even Coach K at the end of practice a couple days ago, he said something about it, and his line exactly was, "Who cares?" Because nobody cares. At the end of the day, if we got to go out there, we got to go out there and get it done, because Trinity's got it done the last 3 years, and that's probably some more motivation for them. So we know they're going to be coming in, that the whole rest of the conference too. So I think that's just it's definitely good to get a little bit of recognition, but at the end of the day, we got to go be prepared for the next practice in Huntington and go 1-0 every week.
And indeed, they'll be a tough team to face. They are every year for teams that face them out of conference. But let's go back for a second. JB saw you during the Trinity game. What a game that was. I remember being, I think, in Illinois that day, if I remember correctly, JB, and just watching you, the reports and updates on that game were incredible. And, you lose it. You get on the wrong side of it, and in a 32-team playoff structure, you get left out essentially in a year that you probably deserve to be in the field in the tournament. But I mean, what did you guys take away from that experience? You mentioned Trinity earlier. Obviously, they're still probably going to be a strong team, even without Tucker Horn and some other components over there. But what did you guys learn from that game that's going to be valuable here in 2024?
I think it was just a lesson, and you got to finish. Like, you got to finish. Like, Trinity's a heck of a team, and they took our best punch. They took a couple of our best punches, and we can even learn something from that and the way they responded to adversity. And for us, we won 39 out of our 40 quarters this season, and we didn't get a chance to make the playoffs because we didn't win 40 out of 40 of our quarters. And that's we knew that going into the season, so we don't have any. There was no feeling sorry for ourselves. I think the motto for us is just finish. We got to finish. That went into the spring, every single workout, every single practice in spring, and now in the camp. It's like the motto is finish. We got to finish. We got to win every single rep, because you never know, that could be the rep that leaves us out. That could be the quarter that leaves us out the playoffs. So it was definitely, I think it was a good thing for this program. Obviously, it's sad. I still think back and heard at that game and that Sunday after playing roads, thinking we had a shot. But at the end of the day, if we would have made it, it would have been just us receiving some grace, because at the end of the day, you got to win the conference to make the playoffs. So, we knew the rules, and we didn't win the conference. We didn't get it done. So the plan is this year we got to go in there and got to try to win every quarter and get the job done.
Well, you guys aren't taking it easy, because you have one of the most challenging out-of-conference schedules that I've seen. You guys open up with a night game against Huntington, the USA South champs. They were a playoff team last year. And then you have DePauw, another conference champion that made it to the playoffs last year, coming to Mount Berry in week 2. I imagine the team's got to be excited about the challenge. Tell us a little bit about how you guys are getting ready for the first really tough 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, it's a blessing to be able to be able to play a bunch of talented schedule, a bunch of talented teams, and so we're motivated. I think we're a talented team too, and I think one of the things that kept us out last year was our strength of schedule, and it's so much respect for Coach K to say, all right, that's not going to be a problem this year. So I think I like that we're in control of our own destiny. If we're as good as we think we are, we're going to go out there, we're going to be prepared, and we're going to get it done. And then so there's no excuse. I mean, it's an honor, to be able to play teams this talented, because I think we're as good as I think we can play with anybody in the country. So it's exciting. It's really fun going into senior year. So I think we're all excited and ready to go.
Frank, let me jump in one time, because I would be remiss if I didn't also mention that week 3 they're traveling to Randolph-Macon. So I mean, it doesn't get any easier with that. That's a heck of a schedule. Sorry, Frank. Go ahead.
Indeed. Well, listen, the SAA obviously is a little bit different this year, thanks to what was an up and coming team. It felt like no longer existing in Birmingham Southern. And I know you get a certain amount of collegial, connections with the schools you play, the players you play. You may hate them for one day in the field, but you understand, what they go through on the field, and you make friends. And some of the players maybe even knew from high school or from your high school days.
Right.
What does the loss of Birmingham Southern mean to you, to Barry, to the SAA? Can you put into words that loss and how it affects things for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, Birmingham Southern was a heck of a program, and they pushed us. They made us better, every year. I was 1-2 against Birmingham Southern. This was actually my first year. This past year was my first year ever beating them, so they made us better every year. So it's saddening to hear something like that. It's saddening for that situation, but at the end of it's sad for the SAA, but it's like we got hopefully the players found a home. I know we got a Birmingham Southern guy out the portal now, so I'm just hoping that those guys were able to find a home because I mean at the end of the day, yeah, I would consider them one of our biggest rivals. But at the end of the day, they put on our pads just like us, so it's extremely sad to hear something like that happen to them. And I just hope everybody affected by that situation was able to fall on their feet.
Yeah, we hope so too. And Brandon, we saw, as you said, they made you better. Last season you got real better too. I mean, you're basically had almost 1,500 rushing yards, 24 rushing touchdowns. I was joking to Frank before we got on live that when I was actually at the game, you were so fast I didn't even have a chance to put my phone up to record that 88-yard touchdown run that you had in the second quarter of that game. What is sort of the bar that you've set now for yourself for this senior season?
I think just for me personally, it's just becoming a more complete player. That's just combination of everything. Improving in the pass game, being more poised, being a better leader for the team. Because at the end of the day, the team just needs me to hit my reads. We have a great offensive line. We have a great offensive line coach. We have other great running backs. And I'll say one of the things about this year that was different from other years was, my running mate Josh Rogers was out for 4 games, and so I kind of got a little bit more carries this year, and so he's going to be back. And then we got Colby Sykes stepped up last year, and I don't want to shout guys out because I can shout guys out forever, but it's like I think it's just, and this is a team, like this is really a team, and for me it's just I got to find my reads because I have a great offensive line, and once I hit in the reads right, things are going to fall into place. So I think the bar this year is just I just want to go 1-0 every week. It's like you've got we've had the awards, we've had the stats, it sounds good, but at the end of the day, it's like we just got to go 1-0 every week. We just got to keep getting it done, finding a way to win, finding a way to put those quarters together, whatever it takes. And maybe the stats won't be as good this year, hope Lord willing they are, but I mean, at the end of the day, I'm 1-0 every week. Coming into senior year, I want to get it done for my guys. I want to get it done for Coach K, for everybody in the Barry program, because at the end of the day, I haven't put a conference championship up yet. None of my class has seen a conference championship yet. So I feel like that's like hanging over our head a little bit. So I think that's a little bit more motivation too. Like just want to go in there this year and just try to get it done.
Your leadership became well known last year thanks to becoming one of the 20 Gallardi Trophy semifinalists. You got to, showcase you in our opening montage when we announced the finalists, but you didn't make it to the finalist round. But I mean, still to be known as one of the top 20 players in the country, essentially, had to be an attribute that you and your team kind of took to heart in a good way. Does that help motivate you, drive you in a season like this? I know you're not one for personal accolades necessarily, but it's got to at least give you some good feeling having been named in that way last year.
Yeah, I mean, it felt good to receive that recognition, and it's definitely something that would be really cool to get this year. But like I said, man, it's just so much more. I just want to win, man. It felt good to receive that honor, but I think it would have just felt a lot better just to, have a couple more weeks of the season to keep the playoffs going. Because at the end of the day, I watched that award ceremony from my apartment, and our season was over. And so I think it would just be cool this year, even if just to keep the season going as long as possible. I think, like I said, a lot of the last year's success came because we had some guys down. I think, also one of the pillars going into this season was our coach talking about selflessness, and we got a lot of guys on offense. So if teams are going to load the box to try to stop me, we're going to air it out, and I'll be there. I'll hit my reads. Yeah. Josh Rogers, Kobe Sykes, they'll hit their reads too. Or we got a quarterback that can throw. We got receivers that can go. So it's like, regardless of however it plays out, I just want to get it. We'll go 1-0 every week. That's the goal. Just keep trying to win the quarters, man. Keep trying to win.
Well, you guys definitely have a real special thing going there at Barry. I really love being there for the game day, seeing the Viking walk. I don't know if you've ever carried that axe. That thing looks huge, and it looks like it weighs a ton. But there is a lot of pride and history. I think, you were talking about conference championships. I met a guy, one of the alums. He was flashing his rings from the SAA title. So there's a history of championships there and a great college football atmosphere. I mean, for those who maybe haven't been to Mount Berry before, what is game day like for a Vikings Saturday afternoon?
The game day atmosphere is great. It's like no other. I think it's definitely one of the best environments. I mean, just from the Viking walks, and even especially on a Mountain Day game, usually our games are pretty much packed to the brim. Great, music. It's really. I'm blessed to be able to play in Barry, man. I'm thankful Coach Cade came and got me. Driving on the campus, it's sometimes it's like, wow. Sometimes it's like, why me? Just coming from Gwinnett County and just seeing my friends. Some of my friends are still there, so it's like every day I'm blessed to be able to do this. Like I'm blessed to be able to play this sport. I'm blessed to be able to play on this team with these guys and these facilities we have. So the game day atmosphere, Rome, Mount Berry as a whole, it's like no other at this level.
Yeah. Hope to make it down there myself at some point. It's something that JB can't stop talking about, and it makes me want to get down and see it myself. Brandon, you've just added to that mentality, so we'll see. But that means stay relevant throughout the season, if you get what I mean by that, because that allows us to come and document a game and see how Barry is doing atop the field. You are in the top 25, essentially. And it is something that you guys should be prideful about, but obviously you got to play the games and win the games coming up here. We'll see how it goes. But before that, it's time for, remember those shout outs that you don't want to shout everybody out on, but I'm going to give you the opportunity because we do that in the show anyway at the end of these interviews. So shout outs to any family, friends, teammates, coaches, etc. that might be watching. Brandon, Cade, the floor is yours.
Shout some guys out. I mean, obviously, first of all, I want to shout out my parents, man. Sherry and Alvin, just for continuing to push me, and then just so many guys on the team, but I can't go without talking about Josh Rogers, man. We came in here together, and so he pushed me to makes me better every day. Obviously, the whole offensive line, Hayden Cagle, Tony Garcia, Reed Richards, all those guys up front. And then obviously just, Coach K, Coach Hinton, Coach Sikora, just for being on me, man, and just keeping the standard, man. And I'm blessed, to be in this position, to be able to play running back for Barry. But, at the end of the day, with Coach Sikora drawing this offense up, man, any running back at Barry is going to have success, man, because we're going to hit our reads. The team's going to be physical. We're going to block well. So I'm blessed to be in this position, and I know all the guys in the room are more than capable of being in this position too. So I'm blessed. I have an extremely grateful heart to be in the program that I'm in now.
We were blessed to have you join us and let folks across the country get to know you a little bit better, because Barry doesn't always get the exposure some of the other teams in this country do. And there's some good football being played down in Georgia, indeed, for the Vikings. And you are one of the best players they got. So we're glad to have had you. Thank you, Brandon, and best of luck this season.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. Appreciate you guys having me on, man. Appreciate you guys talking about the Vikings, man. Hopefully, if I had to guess, I think you'll have a chance to come to a couple of the games this year. I think we'll be playing for a while.
Looking forward to it. We'll see you soon.
So too, but I will say that I would rather do it in like October or November, because man, it was hot in September last year.
It was a hot one. It always is against Trinity. It always is.
And that was Brandon Cade from Barry, one of the best running backs that I got to see live and in person. And I think, he could be a potential Gallardi candidate. We'll see. I mean, he got some extra carries last year, as he said in the interview, because of the injury to one of his teammates. But this is a guy, real explosive player, and somebody to keep an eye on for Barry as they're trying to win back the SAA title from their rival Trinity Tigers.
Indeed. I'm curious to see how this plays out because the polls are all over the place about Trinity and rankings, I should say, about Trinity versus Barry, where they should be ranked in relation to each other. And so I want to say that the AFCA and D3 football had Trinity still above Barry in the end. Was that accurate? And we were slightly reversed, right, on our rankings, just barely, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
So I have a feeling we may be more right than wrong on that one, but we'll see. Because, again, Jeremy Urban, never underestimate him as a head coach as much as Coach K out in Barry. So we'll see where it falls. So let's stay in Region 3 here. And, a team that you pointed to me, it may have gotten covered up by a graphic, but we were talking about where Mary Hardin-Baylor was ranked. You kind of said I was the blame for them to be ranked in our listing, and that is true. I will admit to that fact. But you and I both agree that anybody that's going to assume that Mary Hardin-Baylor is dead in the water is a fool, because
good luck with that one.
You're not going to just have them, not show up for a couple seasons in a row. Larry Harmon's a good coach, still has the backing of Coach Fredenberg. It's still the Cathedral down there. It's still a growing school in Belton, Texas. So I just don't think it's going to turn into a debacle season, 8-2 type of season. Obviously, their schedule could be better in terms of how it shapes early on, especially, but that's a whole nother story for another week. But go ahead and tell folks who we got here.
Well, we got the American Southwest Conference Defensive Player of the Year, I guess, kind of going into the preseason. A linebacker, and there's going to be a linebacker theme you're going to notice here. I didn't do it intentionally, but we like the linebackers this year for some reason. Durand Hill is going to be our next guest on In the Huddle, and we reached out to him down there in Belton to sort of check in on the Crusaders, who for the first time in 20-something seasons didn't win 9 or 10 games and go to the playoffs. So we checked in, and this is what he had to say.
Durand, thanks for joining us, and we kind of just want to jump in there. There's no hiding it, okay? 2023 was not the season, at least in the win-loss columns, that Mary Hardin-Baylor would have wanted to have with the tradition they've had, with the success they've had and everything else. What was the team's feeling coming away from the final game last year once things were settled? What did you guys say to each other about what was next, especially a leader like you?
I mean, I feel like we had many opportunities to take, or where was the next step after the season like that. So I feel like everybody was eager to reload, get back to practice, get back to work. Because I feel like we took a big step away from our traditions and where we should be.
Well, at least I guess maybe it might be some consolation, but you were named the 2024 preseason defensive player for the American Southwest Conference. I mean, do the personal accolades really matter, though, in your opinion? Is it more about the team? What are your thoughts when you hear about all these different things, all region, all American, all that kind of stuff?
All those things are cool, but, I mean, football is a team sport, and truth be told, I couldn't get any accolades without my secondary. I couldn't get any accolades without my offense or my defensive line. So, I mean, they're cool, but I'm more worried about the team and the bigger picture.
Durand, a lot of people have been talking about the schedule coming up because of the woes of the ASC and keeping teams around right now. There's the double round robin that's going to be happening, and that means that you're going to play a team known as Hardin-Simmons twice this season. That game was the game where you posted, I believe, the least tackles for your season in 2023. I think you only had 4 in that one. Does it excite you? Does it scare you at all? What are your feelings in the idea you're going to play your arch rival essentially twice automatically this coming season? And what do you feel about the schedule overall? Because it is a weird situation that a lot of people are turning their attention to this year.
As far as playing them twice, it is exciting. I mean, it's always fun to play a rival, but we get to do it twice this year, so that's exciting. And as far as the schedule, it's different, but, you got to adapt to change.
Yeah, and you guys are going to do what you always do, which is sometimes go on some long road trips for football games. Week 1, you're going up to Tennessee. You've got the game in week 3 up at Whitewater. I mean, I imagine that it's one game at a time, but still it's got to be exciting to know that you have some pretty big matchups early on in September.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Durand, a lot of people out there have given a little criticism to Coach Harmon, somebody who I've grown to know over the last few years, while Coach Fred was still there and after. I've had some great conversations with Coach Harmon. Could you give us, the background or the basis or the thought process here in the trust level the current team has with Coach Harmon? What's your relationship like with him, and why do you think this is the guy that's going to continue to lead Mary Hardin-Baylor to championships?
I mean, just like Coach Fred was, Coach Harmon's a genius. I mean, I trust Coach Harmon with everything. I mean, Coach Harmon knows he's always going to put what's best for the team, not what's best for the individuals. And I feel like, this year should show why he will continue to be the head coach.
Well, our friends at True to the Crew, which is a great way for Mary Hardin-Baylor fans and alums to keep track of the team, reported that there is something like 245 players in preseason camp. That is a huge number. I mean, tell us what is practice like? I mean, that's twice, in certain cases, 3.5 times the size of most Division III rosters. As one of the leaders of the team, how do you connect with 240 something other players?
Well, as far as practice, we kind of split like freshmen in the morning and like returners and transfers in the afternoon. So that's kind of how we split our reps, so we can see everybody and their potential. But as far as we break it down into little groups, we have our team captains and leaders who like get to know every group. So if there's a problem, they feel comfortable going to somebody like a leader, somebody who's been here, that's more comfortable talking to them about their problems.
Makes sense.
Durand, you saw the Stagg Bowl, I would wager, last year, which will be coming back to Texas this year, Stagg Bowl 51, down in the Humble, Texas region down there. When you watch a game like that and you see even North Central get toppled by a team that was out of the blue in certain ways in Cortland, what was your feeling watching that game and the hope it might give to other teams out there, not named Mary Hardin-Baylor, Mount Union, North Central, Whitewater, etc.? What do you think a situation like that does to maybe change the landscape of D3 and make it even more difficult for a team like Mary Hardin-Baylor to succeed out there, because now everybody thinks, hey, we can beat these teams?
I feel like definitely last year was kind of like a shaking up in the D3 world. I didn't know too much about Sunny Cortland until the national championship game, but hats off to them, they handled business.
Certainly. And so, Durand, you're from a town called Buda. Is that right? Buda, Texas. Where is that in the grand scheme of things? And how did you end up finding your way to Belton?
It's a town south of Austin, a little north, 15 minutes north of San Marcos. So it's kind of like right there in the middle. And actually, I got recruited this is my last visit coming out of high school. I love the facilities, the program, so I committed. I played quarterback in high school, so I was recruited as an athlete. Then here, halfway through my freshman year, I made the switch to linebacker.
Okay, Durand, let's have a little fun with this one. I want you to name the funniest player on the roster at Mary Hardin-Baylor. The guy that's the biggest jokester, the guy that you look at to tell all the jokes and break the serious moments. Who on the roster of the crew is the biggest jokester out there?
I'll have to go one of our transfer DNs, Cabo. He can always get you to laugh no matter what.
Okay, then who's the most serious guy out there? The guy that he could tell all the jokes to this other guy, and you just can never break him. It's just like he's way too serious about football, life in general, and everything else. Who's your most serious player out in that field?
Right now, I have to say Dylan Botts.
Why
The D
Dylan?
tackle. He's so serious. He's locked in. I don't know if it's locked in or he's just I don't know. He's just not laughing much right now.
Just puts that helmet on and it's 100%. That's great.
Last question for you. Isaac Faye, obviously getting a little bit more attention now on the other side of the ball for you guys. Does it feel good to have a quarterback kind of, and obviously things can change, so we'll assume for the sake of this interview that Isaac's the guy right now based on his performance, especially toward the end of last year. But does it feel good to have a little bit of helmsman at the offensive side of the ball here, that maybe you guys can build some continuity throughout the season, especially the early part of the season where it was lacking a little bit for your team last year, that 0-3 start and all that stuff?
It does feel good, but me personally, I kind of more just focus on the defensive side, control what we can control on the defensive side of the ball, and the offense handle offense.
Gotcha. Well, JB, I think at this point in time, our good friend Durand, who I look forward to maybe attending a game at some point. I mean, we have a pretty good streak going here, Durand, where I find you guys somehow, some way down in Texas, be it at Trinity, at your place, or whatever over the years. I don't know about all that stuff. Last year, Trinity beat them, so I think we now have something in one record with me in attendance. But nonetheless, Durand, this is time for shout-outs to any family, friends, teammates, coaches, whoever you want to send a shout-out to. It's your floor, Durand Hill.
Shout out my parents. Without them, well, first shout out God. Thank you, God. Without you, nothing would be possible. Shout out my parents. Thank you all. Shout out the whole UMHB football team, and continue to work and have a good season.
It's going to be an interesting one. We are going to pay attention to you. I had you a little bit higher on my ballot for our personal rankings, and JB did, but we both agreed that UMHB is going to make some noise. I think a lot of people are forgetting about you after kind of one dud of a season compared to what you normally would have. Some people out there were killed for a 6-4 season. Let's not kid ourselves. So we look to see where this one goes for you, and with leadership like yours, I have a funny feeling UMHB is going to be in the conversation quite a bit this season. Best of luck to everybody down there.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you guys for having me.
It's hard to believe when you think about it, and thanks to Durand Hill for being with us here, and to the sports information staff, obviously,
nice
UMHB. We appreciate their help, and Barry as well for their help on that prior interview. But it's hard to believe that this program is only about 25 plus years old at this point. It's new in terms of what you think of, D3 programs. All the things they've accomplished, and in that short time, and they're being shown the door just about with the ASC situation. So right now, it's almost like you're playing house money games right now. If you're Mary Hardin-Baylor, I feel like, JB, that to a certain degree, what the future is probably going to hold here. Can you really stay in D3 under this recipe of ASC disaster that we're watching play out in front of us? The reverse St. Thomas effect, where they push St. Thomas out the door versus abandon ship to maroon them on that island with Hardin-Simmons probably. So why not? I'd be pretty pissed off if I was UMHB at this point about how this played out. And a chip on a shoulder can often lead to winning games. Any counterpoint on that?
No, not really. I would just recommend the D3 fans, if you haven't had a chance, to go check out True to the Crew. It's a weekly publication that's all about this team, and a most recent article has all these transfers and other new players that have come in from SEC schools, FCS schools. One of Hobart's leading receivers from last year, Ronnie Daramola, has transferred to UMHB for his final year. So there's a lot of people flocking down to Belton. I think they're not going to apologize for being aggressive when it comes to recruiting, both locally, nationally, and through the transfer portal. They want to win, and I'm expecting that they probably are going to win a little more than they did last season.
Yeah, 6-4 just wasn't going to get it done last year, even with that 0-3 start out of conference. So the one loss in conference killed them. versus Hardin-Simmons, but they get 2 bites of that apple this year, starting in week 6, as we said, and then ending later in the season with part 2 of that matchup situation. Okay, JB, let's go to Region 4 and our interviews there, because we had a couple good ones as well right there. First off, a school I don't think we've ever had an interview with before. We were trying to rack our brains on this. I don't think so. DePauw, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and this is the interesting thing. Once again, kind of coincidental. I swear I'm really not this deliberate or smart to think about this stuff. But as we said earlier, a big game in week 2, DePauw versus Barry. You're going to have Cade versus Luke Marsh, one of the starting linebackers and I believe captain of the Tigers. This is a team that's won the NCAC title the last couple of years, has gone to the playoffs and played some tough games. They are battle tested, and that game against Barry in week 2 could be, something that rockets one or the other up the national poll. So it's going to be a great one, and we talked to Luke about that as well as some other things in this clip. So welcome to the show, Luke. You guys have had quite the run there out in Indiana. Have won your conference a couple of years running now, had a chance to go to the playoffs. What has that experience been for the team, and kind of where are the expectations going into 2024?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. As far as, the success we've had, it's been, great to be a part of the past 3 years in my career. I think Coach Dietz has done a great job, in terms of just leading the team in the right way, culture, everything like that. For this year, our goals are set even higher to just kind of break through. We've obviously made the playoffs the past 3 years, but, we're looking to kind of take that next step as a program. We've been talking a lot as a senior class about, how do we do that? And a big part, it comes from, our senior class taking leadership, focusing in on those little details this year. Obviously, we got a lot of returners, a lot of returning guys who've played a lot of minutes on the field. But we also understand that it's a completely new team with new challenges, and it's been, fun to get into it this camp. And I think we're in a really good spot this year. So.
Luke, it's interesting to me because you mentioned, the 3-year cycle that you guys have gone through. In a lot of ways, your conference was kind of the Wabash conference in a lot of people's minds, and you've really turned perceptions around. You in particular, you started as a freshman, and we have on the screen here 190 tackles in 3 seasons. Your best season tackle number-wise was your freshman season, I believe. It was a very close call with your junior season ultimately. But, you guys, your class, like you said, there's a culture change somewhere here going on. Get more specific about that. Tell us more about what allowed you guys to kind of change this whole perception in the conference and go to the success level we're seeing right now.
Yeah, I think, Dietz really made it apparent to our class that we were going to be able to do something special, and it didn't start with us either. Coming in, he, set the standards a little higher. We were always kind of seen as a, mid-tier, win a lot of games, solid, ball club, but coming in, I think he really set the standard for us that, we have the skills to do something special, but we got to stop playing as individuals and start coming together as a team. And I think, I know from my experience in my class and the, 3 separate teams I've been on, we've definitely been extremely close. And I think that's a big part of, our success on and off the field.
You guys have certainly learned how to win some exciting games, and it was really hard to top that 33-30 win over Wabash in Week 11. With the NCAC schedule, taking up a good, I think, 8 games for the regular season, you may not get as many opportunities to schedule out of conference. But this year, you guys are traveling all the way down to Mount Berry, Georgia, Rome, Georgia, just outside Atlanta in week 2 for one of the more exciting matchups early on in the season. Is that something that the team's looking forward to, or is everybody really just focused on hosting Rose-Hulman in week 1?
Yeah, obviously it's kind of hard to ignore that. That's going to be a big game, a big matchup. We're really excited about that, but you're exactly right. We're not looking past any team, and we're just focused on ourselves and getting ready for Rose-Hulman week 1. Obviously, that's on the back burner in the back of our minds, and we're excited to kind of showcase what we got. But we're really focused on Rose-Hulman and just doing our thing.
The Alma game last year is something that obviously you remember, but you learn from defeat sometimes, and obviously Carter St. John and company have a great crew out there. There's no doubt that they've come a long way, and we could all probably learn a lot about their trajectory and how they've gotten to the certain point they've gotten to. But what did you guys learn personally from that game that's going to actually make you a better team here in 2024?
Yeah, I think, personally, I think there's a big mental block there for us, coming off of the Bell game and the conference championship. We got to learn how to get past that and win playoff games. That's pretty much, that's it. It's that simple. How we do that's a different story. Part of it is, weight room, things like that, just getting healthier, being in better shape. And we actually just brought on a new weights coach, which we're really excited about. And that's been exciting getting into this off season and in camp. So things like that. But I really think a lot of it's a mental game, being prepared to, play those teams in big moments and, learn how to win in the playoffs.
JB, just for a second, it's interesting that you bring that up because I never really thought about this until you said it. Look at Cortland with Cortica at the end of their season, and they seem to always have trouble getting over the hump in the years that they were able to win it. And Ithaca, from time to time in history, I've seen it too. So you're right, those tough trophy games or, whatever you want to call them, rivalry games at the end of the season, you win them, and it sort of sometimes takes air out of the sails for the focus that needs to happen just the next week. It'll be interesting to see if teams get a bye after games like that because of this new format that we're going to start this year, how that affects things. So very interesting insight there, Luke, for sure. JB, go ahead.
Well, Luke, I think I might know the answer to this question because you've mentioned Coach Dietz a few times now. But as a kind of an Indiana native, I mean, you didn't travel too far from home to end up at DePauw. What was it that brought you there, and what's been your favorite part of the experience as a student athlete?
Yeah, I think the big part was it was a trifecta for me. I wasn't exactly sure if I was going to continue playing football. First of all, that was kind of the first thing, but they were definitely on the top of my list in terms of places I was getting recruited to. And then really just my on-campus visits. It just felt like home. That when I talk about the trifecta, it's football, school, and a social life. And I think DePauw does a great job at all three of those things. And I'm able to excel in all three. Like some schools, you got to focus on one and one only. Whereas here I'm able to, play the sport I love, get a great education, and meet tons of new people and, have a good time.
Okay. Luke, you're a very serious guy. I love it. I mean, you're a football guy. I can tell you're enjoying this ride. But you brought up social life.
So let's talk. What do you expect?
I know. Come on. But he brought up social life. So let's for those of us that have never gotten out to DePauw, which I'm one of them. I've been in Indiana once in my life, so I've got to improve on that. But I mean, what is a social life weekend night for Luke Marsh like, or any other DePauw student for that matter? What's the excitement at DePauw that you would sell a student athlete that had an interest in the school on? Luke, tell me about this place.
Yeah, being a D3 school and DePauw is very big on Greek life. So I don't know the percentage, but a lot of the school is in Greek life, and I would say a majority of the team is probably in Greek life as well. So I'm part of Delta Tau Delta fraternity, and it's been a big part of my college career, just having a place to call home and a family, and we have lots of fun throughout the week and after games as well. So it's a good time.
I was a Phi Gamma Delta Fiji when I was a senior, though. I pledged, believe it or not, which that's a show in itself. Someday I'll tell you about why I did that and all that stuff. But JB's got your next question or thought here. Go ahead.
Well, yeah. Now that's senior season, you've got theoretically one last ride here. I mean, what are some of the plans or thoughts after football season? Is that something that you've even considered or talked to your family about? Or are you just going to try to get through the regular season and see how the cards plan out nowadays with all the different spring leagues or some different arena leagues and all that kind of stuff? Is playing some form of professional football in the cards for you, or are you going to take that econ degree and go get into business? I did that. It's not a bad plan, but I'm curious to hear what you think.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go make some money. I'm pretty proud of my career in football, and I think it's given me a lot of great learning points and surely a lot of fun. But I am here to get a degree and kind of take these lessons and everything onto the next chapter of my life. I've been blessed to play in a ton of football games throughout my high school and collegiate career. So one last go around, I'm happy to do it. I'm going to leave it all out on the field.
And from the looks of it, honor roll stuff that I'm seeing on the bio of yours would tell me that you're a very excellent student on top of being that athlete. So you epitomize the student-athlete mentality at DePauw, and best of luck to you on that. We'll call you Luke Make That Money Marsh after this based on that response. But Luke, I'm not sure if you saw the show before, but our tradition with our student-athlete guests is to give them a chance for shout-outs for any family, friends, coaches, anybody out there, teammates. So, Luke Marsh, the floor is yours for shout-outs.
Yeah, I could probably be here all day in terms of shouting out people who've got me to this point. But first and foremost, my family has always been there for me. Pushing me to become better and better and always supporting me. I have a huge tailgate at every game here, full of family ready to watch me play. So I'd like to shout them out. And then, all my coaches through the years, high school, Coach Pelly, Coach Bruns, really put me in a position to succeed. And that's all I got.
What's the best tailgate food at DePauw?
Ooh, I don't know. My dad makes some pretty good smash burgers on the Blackstone. He's got a pretty good setup out there. But
okay.
I miss the breakfast food most tailgates. So I couldn't tell you about before the game. I just get the leftovers.
Wow, so this tailgate starts like in the morning and rolls straight to the 1 o'clock kickoff. That's my kind of party. That sounds like fun.
Quality.
You got to get to Indiana.
Yeah, there's a good crew out there.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Hey, Luke, we really appreciate having you on. One of the joys for us this season is getting to talk to players from schools that we don't often get to talk to, and you are one with DePauw in this situation, and we hope that we've made some Luke Marsh fans out there that didn't already exist because you're quite the guy. I mean, literally, you're 10 tackles away from 200 in your career in college, which is unheard of in a lot of ways in this day and age in college football. Really so good job, keep it up, and best of luck throughout this season.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Like I said in that interview, it was Wabash, the old Wabash Cannonball song. Yeah, and suddenly, thanks to Luke and his group of teammates that he came in with, it's not that anymore. Obviously, they're competitive against each other, but DePauw has really taken advantage of a situation here and made a name for themselves. And so now it's a question of just getting to that next step. And what do you think? Is this a year where DePauw could maybe get some momentum enough to win the NCAC and then get in, more than a couple playoff games, maybe get to the quarterfinals ultimately? What's your view on this?
Well, I think if Wabash is a little bit down and the Mon Bell game isn't as exhausting as it was last year. I mean, if you look at the D3 regular season, that was probably right up there as one of the top 3 or 4 best games when it came down to like how it wrapped up. It was an overtime, sort of the last, sudden victory, sudden death kind of situation. Really exciting with a championship on the line, playoff berth on the line, old rivalry trophy on the line. So I think if you're a DePauw fan, you're probably hoping that maybe things have settled down in your own conference, but they're really going to test themselves with these road trips, and playing teams the national caliber of Barry early on in the year.
Yeah, it'll play out very interestingly. I think they're going to be tested, battle tested. Am I allowed to even say that anymore after last year's situations with North Central? But nonetheless, let's face it, they are going to be in a position where if they can make it through the conference, and we heard Jaden Alfano St. John, bring up any given Sunday type things. Even when you may be the top dog, you may get knocked off before you get there. If they can make it through, they should have the ability and test under their belt to make a role possible inside the playoffs. I'm curious to see where they do get to this season for sure. But like you said, the Moan and Bell game may determine a lot of things at the end of the season for these teams. So, JB, we have one remaining interview here, and it's somebody who, you got to look up to him. You absolutely have to for what he's done in the offseason as a rising sophomore to junior, or what do you call it, rising junior? Is that how you look at him? But I mean, the fact he's just a junior is amazing to me. He is mature beyond his years. Carter St. John from Alma. And, we heard a little bit about him in his freshman year, obviously, in the playoffs. He got him through the first round game and everything else and looked really good. And we're like, who's this kid? And all this stuff. And then in the second season, the Mount Union game, that's career defining to a certain point. That is something that
for sure
woke people up if you weren't already, okay? And now after that, he does quarterbacks versus cancer and does a lot more than just that when you look at the experience on the field and all that stuff right now. And just you're going to see it as much as we do in this interview. Carter St. John, the quarterback from Alma, joined us.
So, Carter, you guys burst on the scene last year having an undefeated regular season. You guys had a great playoff run. I know it didn't quite turn out the way you wanted yet. You suffered an injury in the Cortland game. But what did last season kind of teach the Scots of what you guys are really capable of, and what are you kind of taking into the 24 season?
I think it kind of showed us that we were capable of stuff that maybe we didn't think we were beforehand. Alma only has 1,500 students, and we're playing schools that are a lot larger than us. And Alma's not huge historically, like to say that Mount Union's, the Whitewaters, all those sort of schools. So it's kind of cool to see us, like you said, break onto the scene and play up to a national standing instead of just winning a conference or playing with teams around the Midwest, but being more on a national scale is pretty cool for me to see.
Carter, I just want to make sure I've got something right on the screen here, because the roster's saying junior quarterback. I mean, you play like a graduate quarterback, let alone, senior, but junior quarterback, correct?
Yep, junior.
And so you go into a game last year versus Mount Union. Okay, you may be only a sophomore at that time, but you know what Mount Union is. And you guys just held on, and took it to them and win it at the end, basically. How did you guys do this? How did you manage basically taking down the machine in an early round like you did, second round win that you had versus them? And, I mean, were you going into a game like that with house money mentality, or what was the thought process leading up to that game, and, what was being said after the game by you guys after you took down the machine?
So definitely, just for me personally, I've always thought football's fun. Football's a game. So who cares? You win, you lose. In college, you only have 4 years of it. So do as much, or there should be no pressure on you. That's just my mentality going into it. But as a team, and that going into that game we're underdogs. I think I saw a post, I don't know if it was right before or the day before the game, that we were obviously can't bet on these games, but some website had less like 23.5 points underdogs. And so you're like, screw it. If we're going to lose, we did exactly what everyone expects us to do. But if we go out and win, then we just completely shock the nation. And so, like you said, house money. we're not supposed to win, but if we do, wow, look at us. And that's kind of what it was. It's just we're not supposed to win this game. We're not supposed to be in the game even at halftime. So since we are, might as well go and win it.
And win it you did. Well, nowadays it's a different story for the Scots. I mean, you guys are ranked number 7, and I think both the AFCA and the D3Football.com polls, we had you ranked as high as 4 in our, in Frank and my ranking system. But you have an interesting week 1 opponent in the Wisconsin River Falls. I think they're Falcons, Frank. I always messed up. I think I would call them River Hawks, but they're actually the Falcons. A WIAC team. But ironically, you guys are probably favored. I don't know if you can say heavily or not, but how do you prepare for a big game in the season opener? You're coming in as a top 10 ranked team against a team that's also viewed as, hey, these are one of the best teams in the country as well.
Yeah, same preparation as the last 2 years has been for us. Just still trying to have that underdog mentality. Obviously, it's a lot harder when you guys give us flowers or whatever, and we're ranked as high as 7th. And so it's a lot harder to do it now that we're ranked that high. But Coach Couch has talked to us about, he's always said, don't drink the ink. And so that just means, we're going to have stuff written about us. We're going to see all that sort of stuff. But don't fall in love with it. Don't fall in love with yourself. Still have that underdog mentality of, hey, this is, now that we're on a national level, we still want to, we have a bigger goal in hand instead of just winning in the second round of the playoffs. It's higher than that. Obviously, we want to win the whole thing. So that's our mentality, is just still trying to be underdogs throughout the entire year.
Flowers are better for Valentine's Day and Mother's Day anyway, so not during the football season. So, Carter, you reached out to us some months ago, and you kind of said, hey, Frank, hey, JV, hey, Pat Coleman at D3 Football, I've got this idea, and I want to really follow up on it to do something really benevolent for cancer charities out there. Not everybody heard you and your cohorts, let's say, on the Around the Nation podcast necessarily, so we wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of take people through what QBs versus cancer or quarterbacks versus cancer is and how it's going ultimately, and how it may actually help guys like you and some of the other guys prepare for not just the season but for life in general. It's been so impressive to watch you do this, but I want you to put this in your own words to the degree you can, so take as long as you'd like and go ahead.
Yeah, so Quarterbacks versus Cancer is a foundation that I started, and the whole premise of it is what I did was I tried to reach out through Instagram DMs mainly to every single starting Division III quarterback from last season. And I pretty much, the idea was, what I did was I reached out to high school students and reached out to them. They can come to Alma to train for $25 an hour with me. And all that money will go to a charity of my choice. And I picked the Gratiot County Party Foundation in Alma. And so that was my charity, and everyone else that participated also got to use their money through the training sessions or donations, anything like that. And they can put the money towards whatever they wanted. And like you mentioned, a lot of people throughout the entire Division III world helped me, but specifically you guys. Frank, I know we talked about it pretty much almost as soon as I posted something on it and reached out to you. But you were super helpful in everything that went on, and ideas and stuff like that. So it was amazing.
And yeah, and so Carter, why don't you tell everybody out there? So I've got my shirt on. The mayor's got his. It looks like you're sporting yours too. How can people go out and get one of these? I mean, these great material, really nice, soft cotton T-shirts. I mean, obviously there's the QBs versus Cancer Twitter handle. I think you guys are on Instagram also. Where else can people go to find out more information and support the charity?
Yeah, so we have our own website, quarterbacksversuscancer.com. That will have all the information that I've forgotten about to tell you guys. And so anything you want to do there, there's a homepage where you can read more about us. You can see all the quarterbacks that have signed up to help the cause. You can make a donation if you want to donate to a certain local Division III quarterback in their name. You can also go to the store and buy a T-shirt. I believe they're $30 on the store, and so we'll ship those out as soon as we can. My dad and I are the two main guys in the process, and I have all my shirts back home, and so he does most of the shipping and handling because I don't want to run a store back in the dorm in Alma, so he's shipping those out as fast as he can. But that's where you can find out a lot of the information is on our website, quarterbacksversuscancer.com.
And as I have told you, but I'm going to say it out loud here, what we normally do, the Sparkle Man campaign this past year, I kind of already committed to St. Jude's for what we're doing, the Cortland jacket, which is interesting because, again, we'll talk more about football in a second, but, Cortland barely ousting you guys in the third round, but they go on to win the national championship, sign the lining of that jacket. And we're, as we record this, we're just at the end of that auction, basically. We'll see how that goes. But this coming year, we're going to do fundraising ahead of time. And any proceeds that we do receive will be going to QBs, or Quarterbacks Versus Cancer, for your guys to split up the way that you would do it normally, Carter. So it's something that we want to really embrace and thank you for in that manner. So thank you for everything you're doing. Back to football. What is the height for this team? Is this team capable of a Stagg Bowl and winning a Stagg Bowl this year? Give me the pluses and the minuses. What did you lose? What do you bring back that makes you confident that you guys are keyed in for success here this year, especially as everybody graduates off somebody, okay? But what is so strong about this team this year from your mindset besides yourself out there as QB?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think we can win the national championship just being me and the competitor, and I know all the guys in Alma have that competitive fire. That's our end goal, like Coach Couch just talked about. What for us you can expect is very fast offense. We try to snap the ball with between 8 and 12 seconds every single play. So fast paced, very fast paced. I often apologize to our defense in case we score on the first play or go quick 3 and out because they're on the field for a large portion of the time. We try to actually lose the time of possession battle just because that's who we want to be on offense, is scoring as fast as we can. Like I think we compare it to basketball. The more shots you take, the more points you're able to score. So we want to run the most amount of plays as we possibly can. We bring back 10 on the offensive side, which is exciting, and have a nice young guy slotted in. At the guard position that we did lose. On defense, I think we lost 6 or 7 starters from last year. But again, I think the guys that were there, mainly fifth-year seniors, have taught the younger guys, and I think it's proven the point. And I think the defense has gotten after it really early in camp. I know us offense has been frustrated because they've had our number the first few days. So should be an exciting year for the Scots.
Carter, before I let JB ask the next question, I just want to say I'm going to try to get to a game this season, and I try to record every play, so you're going to be apologizing to me too as I have a heart attack on the sideline trying to keep up with play after play and trying to upload things to Twitter in the meantime and everything else. It's your kind of offense is the situation that I almost despise out there, but I understand it's what you got to do sometimes, so go ahead. JB?
Yeah, and just so that, and I know some fans like to refer to us as the East Region show. I mean, I feel like we've been doing this long enough when we've gone to enough games and been places where we're really national. But for some of maybe our fans who have been around with us for a longer haul, I mean, it looks like Alma is directly north of Lansing, northwest of Detroit. But you're from a place called Zionsville, Indiana. Is that right? How did Alma get on your radar, kind of coming out of high school? I know that the states do, intersect in certain places, so maybe it was close to home. But let us know a little bit about how Alma got on your radar, and who should we thank for bringing you to D3?
Yeah, so my dad actually played basketball at Kalamazoo, and so I grew up. Well, he's from Charlotte, I guess I should say. So we would always visit Thanksgivings and stuff like that. We would visit his family in Charlotte, Michigan. And so I've always kind of grew up around Michigan, maybe not so much Alma, but he went to Kalamazoo, which obviously is in the MIAA with Alma, and his best friend growing up went to Alma, and then actually was roommates with Coach Couch for, I think, at least a semester or maybe a full year. And so that's who really put me in contact with Coach Couch and then I just sent him an email with my film, and I guess the rest is history. But it's all thanks to my dad, and Jeff Curtis is now the athletic director at Northwood, but he's a proud Alma alumni, and he's the one that kind of introduced Coach Couch and I.
The rest is making history, I think we should say, in your case, because you really are making some history as things move along here in your career, storied already, and with time to go, as they say, with the junior year and senior year for you. Carter, I'm sure we're going to be talking a lot more about you all season long here. Our tradition on the show is to give our student-athlete guests the ability to give shout-outs, any family, friends, teammates, coaches, etc. that might be watching. So Carter St. John, the floor is yours for shout-outs.
I would like to shout out, first of all, my sister Hadley. She would be very, very angry at me if I did not, because she likes to get all the announcements that she can, so she'll get a shout out first. My grandma, I call her Grammy. She's fighting cancer right now, and so I really wanted to shout out her because she loves hearing me talk, and especially all my buddies at Alma that are going to be yelling at me, especially my roommates. I'll shout out them. I told them to be quiet for right now as I do this, so I'm sure they're probably listening in, so they'll hear their shout out. But yeah, especially my grandma, Grammy. I love you. Love my parents, everyone. Thank you.
Hadley, Grammy, etc. God bless everybody out there that's watching this. And like I said, this will be far from the end of the Carter St. John story this season. Stay healthy this year, and the sky's the limit, I think, for you, Carter. So we're rooting for you to stay healthy and continue doing what you're doing to change not just Division III, but the cancer community out there with what you've been doing. It's honestly extraordinary is the best word I can come up with right now, and it doesn't do it justice. So keep it up, my friend.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on.
I said a lot before the interview. What are your takeaways about this young man?
I mean, I think it's a quintessential, why D3 story. Instead of trying to prop himself up with an NIL deal or some money from some kind of restaurant or something there in Michigan, he's trying to raise money to fight cancer and raise awareness over a disease that really affects families everywhere. Is part of the reason why you auctioned off the Stagg Bowl 50 jacket, Frank. Cancer is just an awful thing. It's affected all of us in certain ways. And so I just have to give that guy a ton of credit for finding a way to build a platform around something so positive, for reaching out to fellow student athletes at the Division III level, fellow quarterbacks, so they have this common bond. They're all working together towards a common goal. I'm sure on the field they'll battle tooth and nail, and everyone wants to win. But when it comes to this, everybody's a winner. It's a great cause, and it's really something to see how it's grown.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And best of luck to his team. As we said, MIA will not be easy in that situation. Like we said, their hope and trying are always there to keep things real in that conference. We'll see where it goes. So let's do a quick.
When you saw last year too, Hope was like this close to getting into the playoffs, right? With an expanded playoff field, theoretically, you could have two teams from this conference get in. So we'll see what happens.
I was just going to say, review here quickly the conferences. I'm going to ask you for your quick take on who the winner is of the conferences, kind of like what we did last time for Regions 1 and 2. We'll go with the known quantities here more than anything else. ASC, is it going to be Hardin-Simmons or Mayor Hardin-Baylor?
Well, either one wouldn't surprise me. So I guess if I'm being pressed, the preseason polls, everyone was picking the Cowboys, so I'll go there for now, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Crusaders end up on top.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the Crusaders in the end. I really do. The ODAC, Randolph-Macon, will they repeat?
I don't know if they can overcome all the losses to graduation. I'll have to wait and see. And there's some other good teams in that conference, like W&L. They could move to the top of the ranks. Maybe Bridgewater. They have a good program. So I feel like the ODAC might be a little more open-ended. We'll see.
It's an interesting way to put it. I mean, they do have losses for sure, but they also have momentum, and that's a big deal when you think about it. And so, yeah, I mean, I was looking down the list of the ODAC right now. I don't see anybody currently there that I feel can do it this year. Maybe Bridgewater could pull it out somehow. But I mean, I will stick with Randolph-Macon for this season. SAA-wise, Barry?
Skull Vikings. They seem to be the team. They've got a loaded group on offense, and their defense is going to need to be able to button down things better than they did when I watched them play against Trinity last year. But the Tigers don't have Tucker Horn anymore, and they don't have Caleb Armel and some of these amazing fifth-year players like they did in prior years. So I think we'll see how Barry does in Week 1 against Huntington. That's a good matchup. The Hawks are the defending USA South champs, and then they got to play DePauw. If Barry is 2-0 going into Week 3, look out.
Tucker Horn is not walking through the tunnel. Tucker Horn might in a couple of years, though. So, yeah, at least somebody named Horn. Raider Horn will be walking through the tunnel. I'll guarantee you that this year.
Yep,
long story short, I think it's Barry this year, too. I'll stick with you. The USAC, USA South, I think Huntington. Any argument there?
Well, I mean, we'll see if Belhaven was a one-hit wonder or not, right? I mean, they got a playoff run out of it last year, and so can they reload, or will the Hawks take it back? And I guess, Frank, is the SCAC a thing this year, or do we have to wait till next year? What's the story with that conference? I had it on my list initially, but what I'm trying to figure out is when does that exactly start? I can't remember.
I don't think it's now because it's not even listed on D3 Football. I was just looking myself, to be honest with you, and so
I was wondering about that.
It must
be 25.
Yeah, it's sort of unofficial right now as an existence of a conference.
Unofficially official.
Yeah, basically,
okay.
yeah. What about our friends in the HCAC going to Region 4 quickly here?
Yeah, so, I mean, last year we saw Mount St. Joe's, and was it Josh Taylor who had that amazing season at quarterback? He threw for like 4,000 yards or something crazy like that. If he's back, then, hey, I'll pick the Lions, but if he's not, I haven't had a chance to look at that yet. There's always that sort of conglomeration of, the Rose-Hulmans and, the Franklin Grizz and Hanover, all of them sort of jockeying, but I was assuming that even if Josh Taylor has graduated, that the momentum of last year will keep the Lions intact. I mean, they looked great in their playoff game and really gave everyone they were like, oh my gosh, they might pull this off. But I'll stick with MSJ for now.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Although, like I said, I'm curious to see Rose-Hulman versus DePauw. I think that could be an interesting game to establish who Rose-Hulman is this season. MIAA, I think that you're going to agree with me that until further notice, is Alma for this season.
Yeah, I'll say Alma, but I think a 1B will probably be Hope, and with the expanded playoffs, it wouldn't surprise me if Hope gets in.
NCAC, DePauw.
Yeah, especially if Wabash has dropped off a little bit, then that seems pretty likely.
OAC, Mount Union.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I'm curious to see in the OAC is whether or not Marietta's season last year was sort of a fluke, or are they starting to do something there that could shake things up a little bit? And who knows, maybe if John Carroll falls on hard times, Marietta could sneak in as an at-large
Week 10
team.
is Mount Union Marietta, don't forget. So, I mean, it's late in the season.
Yeah,
they might get some
that could be
momentum
for the
heading into
OAC
that.
title. You never know. Yeah,
exactly. Good point. But again, and we're going to say this throughout the next show and this show and future shows. You can lose versus those perennials now and still make the playoffs. The problem, again, for the OAC exists in that it's such a long conference that their MPI numbers are not going to look fantastic no matter what they do, really. And so just keep that in mind.
500.
That long story short, you can go 8-2 and make the playoffs now with some level of possibility, but don't assume you will. Don't assume that's the absolute, because there are other factors that are going to play in, and there will probably be more than 40 undefeated 1-loss and 2-loss teams, and anybody else that wins an automatic bid that's below 2 losses out there. So knowing that, somebody's not going to get in at those levels of win-loss record. So just keep that in mind, everybody, as we try to get used to this new thing called the MPI. Okay, JB, last thoughts here for Regions 3 and 4.
Hey, Calvin, welcome to the party. We got another new D3 football team out there. So welcome to Calvin. They have a week 1 game against Oberlin, and we'll see them, throughout the season, and we'll be adding them to the scoreboard and hopefully catch some of their highlights. First year D3 teams don't tend to win a lot, but it sure looks like Calvin's gone all in. They've got the locker rooms, the uniforms, and everything. It looks like they're really trying to do something there. So they might win a few games, and we'll talk about them when they do.
You know who's Calvin's favorite philosopher?
I wonder. Is it Calvin?
Hobbes.
I walked into that one.
Yep. On that note, folks, we'll see you on Tuesday with our Regions 5 and 6 show. Don't forget Thursday coming up. We will be, we're going to finalize it on Friday, so after we have recorded this, but before we air it, finalizing things with RPI to make sure we're going to have a live pre-game show, post-game show at RPI for the UWL game there Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll see you soon. Thanks for joining us.